The moment I landed in Hanoi, I felt all the excitement return and all the stress from leaving Korea fall behind. I took a taxi to my hotel 5 minutes from the airport and checked out my Vietnamese money. The next morning, I had my first Vietnamese breakfast, which was very unusual, but conveniently located right next to the hotel. I had done a lot of research into how to best experience Halong Bay and decided to take a bus to Cát Bà Island, where I had booked an Airbnb, and then book a day tour rather than one of those overnight tours. A driver picked me up at my hotel in just a regular car, and I thought, oh wow, this is special service. I'm going to get driven all the way to Cát Bà in a car. So first we crossed the Red River and got to Hanoi, and I was taking excited pictures out the window. All the houses looked different, everything was colorful, there were so many people on motorbikes. It just had a very different feel from South Korea, and it reminded me very much of Thailand, just very much alive and very exciting. The driver stopped in Hanoi and told me to get out and that we had arrived, and I thought, oh no, I booked something wrong and I just went from the airport to a hotel called Cát Bà. But then I realized that he had taken me from my hotel to the drop-off station where people gathered to take the bus to go to Cát Bà. We had about an hour before the bus was leaving, so they told us we could go around and eat or just check out the old quarters. So this was my first experience walking around the old quarter. It was a beautiful sunny day, the sky was blue, and everything was colorful, crowded, and very exciting for me. I was a little bit afraid of getting lost and missing the bus, so I just walked down a couple of streets and took in the scenery, found a little shrine or temple, and took some photos and spotted some restaurants that I thought I might want to eat at. And then I returned to the drop-off spot for the bus. When I got on the bus, I sat right in the very front, thinking I could take a lot of pictures along the way. And then some guy sat down next to me. He gave me his hand and he said, "Hello, my name is Heiko and I'm from Germany." And so that was funny because I shook his hand and I said in German, "I am Birte and I'm also from Germany." And then we just ended up talking the entire 4.5-hour trip, just chatting away, telling us everything about everything, pretty much, traveling, where we were from, what we had done. And I took a few pictures out of the bus. You could see the damage from the recent really strong hurricane that had come over this area. So I took some photos of that. But most of the time, we were just chatting and having a good time. It was really nice to meet someone and just kind of get along with him right away. I don't know if it was because we were German and just had so much to talk about, but it was a lot of fun. At one point, we had to stop and get off our big bus and take a boat over to Cát Bà Island. And it was a very tiny boat, very crowded. We had to bend our heads and not hit the ceiling. And then on the other side, we got into a minivan. And here, Heiko actually sat next to someone else, and I sat next to a French lady. And we were trying to talk a little bit in broken English and a little bit of French until I got dropped off at my Airbnb, which had a huge bed and a butterfly inside. And from here, I had a good view over one of the streets in Cát Bà. And then I went out after I dropped off my things in search of food because after my little breakfast that morning, I hadn't really had anything else. I noticed a lot of construction going on in Cát Bà. Most of the sidewalks were ripped up and being replaced. A lot of buildings were being renovated, and I was pretty sure that it was because of the hurricane, but it sounded like it might have just been a scheduled renovation. I wasn't totally sure, but this is Cát Bà seen from the waterfront. It was really pretty. But then the water itself was pretty much gone, and there was some major construction going on in the bay. I'm not sure if they purposefully were trying to make the bay bigger or smaller, or anyway, so I found a restaurant and got some spicy rice and asked them to add more chilies and had a nice drink. And then it was about 4 o'clock, I think, and I thought I would go in search of seeing the sunset. I had seen a sunset spot on the map and I was going to try and find it. Because of the hurricane and because of all the damage, some roads were actually blocked. And I think the way where I wanted to go, I couldn't really go. But then there were people also looking for a spot, and we were searching the hillside until we found this almost hidden pathway. And then we just climbed up the pathway. We came past these, I think they were grave sites. Then we found the absolutely destroyed lookout point. The road had been covered with cables and knocked over trees. We had to climb over and under things, but we were in a group and we just kept going until we reached the top, where we had a beautiful view over the bay behind us and over the Cát Bà Bay in front of us. We were still sort of early, waiting for the sunset, and more people arrived while we were waiting. We had a beautiful view over the limestone hills behind us toward Lan Ha Bay and Ha Long Bay, and then the sun was setting in front of Cát Bà. We could see a lot of boats lumped together out on the bay, and we could see a lot of construction happening in the center of the bay, right in front of Cát Bà. And later on I would get a much closer look of what was going on. And I just looked up to find out actually what was happening at the time. Here you can see all of us getting comfortable waiting for the sunset with Cát Bà below us. I really like the view of this bay behind us and the hills. This is really the beginning of Lan Ha Bay and Ha Long Bay, and where my boat would start the next day. As the sun was setting, it got really pretty. It was a very orange sky and the sun was reflecting on the water. It was really beautiful view. The colors kept changing in front of us and behind us as the light got softer. More and more people arrived. It was getting difficult to find a spot to sit and see. This guy went really far down. I was worried that he might fall down and get killed. My mother instinct took over and I was like, be careful. But he made it. He came back up and survived. So this is now actually the sunset. It was really bright orange and then just kind of disappeared into the haze in the distance. It wasn't a complete sunset on the horizon, but rather behind the clouds. You can see it became just a real round ball of fire, very red, and then it slowly disappears. And as it was setting, we were starting to look on how to get back down. We had to make sure we got down with enough light because the way up had been difficult to climb, and we now had to make sure not to trip or fall anywhere. So we headed back down, some of us earlier than others, I think. We were just trying to be careful. But we waited until the sun was completely gone, took a few more pictures of the changing light, and then started our way down past really beautiful flowers that I had noticed on the way up. Here you can see still the view, and then you can see on the pathway the things we had to climb over and look out for. Cables, poles, broken branches that had fortunately been cut up. But yeah, you can see a lot of destruction from Typhoon Yagi just a few weeks before. I split from the people I had walked down the mountain with around here and kept walking by myself to the waterfront. I saw that the sky was really beautiful and I wanted to get a good view, so I needed to get to an open space. And so then when I got to the waterfront, this is what I saw. Of course, the sky was really beautiful, but you can also see how the entire bay is being filled in with sand. And I just looked this up to see what was happening. And so this did not happen because of the hurricane, but this was a project that had been planned since 2017 and actually got started in September, October of 2024. It was a reclaiming of the bay by filling it in completely with sand and creating new land for a new landscape, a new harbor, new hotels and luxury buildings are supposed to be built here. I learned that the project is still under construction even now in the middle of 2026 and will continue probably through 2027. So if you're planning to go to Cát Bà, you will probably see some of this, but a lot of construction as well. You can see how the promenade by the bay is broken, the fence is knocked over. All of that was because of Typhoon Yagi, but it probably would have been destroyed anyway in order to make space for new hotels. Then I took this cool photo of a man standing in front of the buildings, and I thought, wait a minute, I think that's Heiko. And I called him, and indeed it was Heiko from the bus. He was in search of some food. I was still full from what I had eaten earlier that afternoon. So we just walked around. He got some kind of street food that he really liked. And we just once walked around this bay here because we had seen it and thought it would be fun to just explore. And we just walked and chatted, and I took pictures. He was not too upset with me stopping every few minutes to take a photo. And then we split ways once we got to Cát Bà. We each had our plans for the next day. Please join me for my one-day boat tour through Halong Bay.